I think this is from Netanyahu what he said about that he will not go ahead with the second stage in the agreement unless that there is new preconditions. So I think this is a tactic from Netanyahu in order that he will try to make to blackmail Hamas in order that they can minimize their that conditions for going to the second stage. He will try to finish all things in the first stage, which is releasing all the detainees in the first stage. And not going to the second stage because, as you know, there is a problem with the Smotrich, which who treated that he will not supporting Netanyahu if you go into the second stage. So that's mean Netanyahu is playing like a tactic and using this tactic against Hamas. And also at the same time, he will send a message to the Israeli family detainees that he now that's making all his effort in order that he will release that's this detainees. And as you know, he suggested something concerning the first stage that he said he will go ahead with what Invoy Witkoff for the Middle East, Mr. Stephen Witkoff, when he suggested that he will make the suggestion to release from Hamas half of the detainees and the bodies. And instead, and for this matter, the Israeli will still going in the ceasefire, and also they will enter all the and allow to enter all the humanitarian aids and the bulldozers and
But
also the
on the
tanks.
ground,
And
sir, the humanitarian aid is not allowed to enter Gaza anymore.
yes, I know this is what is Netanyahu try to send this message by starting to cutting all the assistance or the aids, and this is something like a blackmail that he put his preconditions to send it to Hamas that and he will not allow to any assistance to enter Gaza anymore now unless Hamas will go ahead with his new precondition, and also going with the Mr. Steve Witkoff, what he suggested. And also what also Netanyahu suggested besides Witkoff is that Hamas to release five of the detainees and some bodies, and after that they will allow to the assistance aids to enter Gaza, but it will be like a new process in the first stage and not going to the second stage.
Dr. Darawi, how might Hamas respond if negotiations for phase 2 collapse amid rising humanitarian crisis? Are they preparing for a post-ceasefire escalation?
In my opinion, Benjamin Netanyahu does not want to go to phase 2, and this is what he thought all along. He wants to satisfy the far right, and we have seen protests today in Tel Aviv requesting the complete release of all detainees and continuing the ceasefire agreement as agreed upon by Benjamin Netanyahu earlier. But unfortunately, Netanyahu himself was able to change the negotiating delegation to bring one that is only clueless about the entire process. Hamas stated that they will not release any of the detainees except with the deal as agreed upon and as guaranteed and sponsored by the US. I think Benjamin Netanyahu is manipulating the new US administration, especially that he saw the readiness of Trump and the Trump desire of what Netanyahu did not even request. He is doing for him more than he wishes. Trump is giving a lot to Netanyahu, and with this vision, things are going to get worse than in Gaza, and there will be further escalation. And there is also now a state of an Arab unity to end the war and to start reconstruction efforts and to start the day after the war in the Gaza Strip, especially that Cairo was able to convince Hamas to not be present in the day after the war, which is what is requested by Netanyahu and what is desired by Israel. But Israel unfortunately does not want also the power, and therefore Cairo was able to start a technocratic government, and Hamas will approve of that, as well as the PLO. But the dilemma here is in the US side. The US is giving Benjamin Netanyahu more than he ever wanted in the Gaza Strip. Trump was able to announce that Gaza could be the Middle East Riviera for the Israeli.
Yes, sir, but
and
this won't happen.
لكن هذا never even dreamt of. And therefore, I think that there are things that to handle. First, that the current Israeli administration is not concerned with the detainee release and is not also concerned with a rooted settlement of the Palestinian cause. We have a summit to be held tomorrow in Cairo, and I think there will be decisive outcomes as we are adopting the policies of the Arab nations, especially Cairo, towards the US, and Israel rejecting the displacement to Sinai, which is only completely rejected. Even Trump took his proposal back regarding this, and he said that he did not think that there will be complete rejection by Cairo and Jordan and a number of Arab nations, and therefore the Arab nations is also supporting the Jordanian Egyptian stance towards the Palestinian cause. But the Arab nations as well does not want a reconstruction, and then we find more of what happened in October 7th, and we go back to the same circle again. What happened in the Gaza Strip, around 5 processes of reconstruction: the 2008, the 2009, 2011, then 12, then 14, then 16 and 18, 2020, 2021, and in 2023 we saw what happened in October 7th. We have a real crisis here regarding the reconstruction and the management of the entire file. The Israeli side is not helping to take decisive measures regarding Gaza and unifying the Palestinian factions, and to have one armed entity affiliated with the PLO, whether a new authority or the current one. It's all about what is happening on Palestinian territory. The only solution is disarming the resistance and the two-state solution, which is what is proposed by Cairo and the Arab nations to the Biden administration. And during the Blinken visit to the Middle East, a plan was set for the day next to the war, and announcing a sovereign Palestinian state on the borders of 1967. And I think Cairo, when worked on this, it considered the
Okay, sir, I'll be
humanitarian
back to you again, but I'll ask Dr. Mekki first. How does the rising humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza directly destabilize regional security, sir?
I think this is humanitarian. It will influence negatively on the even negotiation and also on the situation. Because, as you know, Israeli didn't even fulfill all the commitments about allowing for entering all the humanitarian aids, and according to the first stage of the agreement. So I think, yes, this will influence on the life of the people in Gaza. As you know, until now, people of Gaza need more and more of the humanitarian and also in the medical, and also they have problems concerning the solid waste, which they have about 200,000 tons of the solid waste in Gaza, which is a problem in the pollution, polluted Gaza environment there, and also the sewage. They have a problem in the sewage because also the water of the drinking water is mixed with the sewage water. So this is the problem also concerning the life of the people, and also in the hospitals, on the medical. Many of the hospitals, or almost of the hospital, have been destroyed, and so now they need to rebuild the hospitals
You're
and
discussing the
renovation.
reconstruction. Dr. Mickey, I just want to ask you in this context a question. In light of the humanitarian aid that Israel is banning to enter Gaza now, and the people over there, and we're in the holy month of Ramadan, are starting, of course, to panic. There's no food, and they're starting to store more food and run to store more food to make sure they have food, not to starve. Is all this taking place normal, sir, in light of the international community overseeing all that's taking place, of course, taking into consideration the efforts of Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which are very much, of course, appreciated all over the world? But is this normal?
Yes, I think the problem, as you said, the Israeli, according to the media there, I think Netanyahu is using this tools in order to cut the aids of the people, especially in Ramadan. He is not allowing now, from yesterday, not allow, or this is the third day, I think, that he issue that decision in order not to allow for any humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, especially in Ramadan months. And as you know, the people is needs this aid, especially in Ramadan. And also about the international community, I think the international community should pressure on
On Israel, on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, sir. Okay, Mr. Darawi, how does the aid blockade impact mediation efforts and its role in regional stability, sir?
In my opinion, Israel is trying to destroy the entire region, adding fuel to the fire to wage a war once again. Netanyahu, since day one, does not want a truce or a ceasefire. And if it weren't for the pressures applied by the US, we wouldn't have seen this ceasefire, and Netanyahu would have continued with the war. The US was able to apply some pressure to finish this phase, and what is happening in the Gaza Strip does not even go with the international law or the humanitarian international law. They are violating the democracy that is claimed by the US and Israel. Unfortunately, today we are seeing the destruction of the Statue of Liberty in Gaza. This lost freedom and liberty is a stigma on the United States of America. The United States always talking about human rights and demanding for human rights application around the world is violating core human rights in Gaza, helping Israel, and there are tens of thousands of weapons, arms and equipments that will be shipped into Israel step by step, approved by the State Department of the US. We are encountering a real catastrophe if a war is resumed again. Now the Israeli side and the US should have a clear vision that what is happening in Gaza is only targeting voluntary or forcible displacement, and the forcible displacement was entirely rejected by Cairo along with Arab nations, and then we found proposals for voluntary displacement. What is happening now in Israel and what is being carried out by the Israeli government and the Prime Minister, that he will help Palestinians to be displaced voluntarily after eliminating Hamas. I think the Israeli side also stated that they will not be able to eliminate the resistance or Hamas as long as there is an occupying power to part of the Palestinian territories, and there was agreement until Netanyahu assumed office as prime minister, rejecting the two-state solution. and any negotiations in this regard. We're talking since 2007, and the processes carried out by Netanyahu cutting the ways between Gaza and the West Bank, and rejecting the unity of and sovereignty of Palestinian lands, rejected by the Israeli administration to draw any connections or links between Hamas and the PLO, as Netanyahu seeks the displacement and establishing a Jewish state. Benjamin Netanyahu is now talking about Jews, and in this timing he wants to protect the Jewish state. These are statements by Benjamin Netanyahu that started to be diplomatically and politically acceptable. He's dealing with the religious extremist Jewish state, excluding the Gaza Strip. He wants to fail the establishment of a Palestinian state to establish a Jewish religious extremist state. He wants to be a
Got your point,
savior.
sir. Mr. Darawi, given Netanyahu's narrative is a renewed, intensified conflict in Gaza inevitable, sir? And what role does Netanyahu's narrative play in shaping Israel's next moves after the first phase ends, sir?
In my opinion, if it weren't for the US administration being totally convinced of the displacement of Palestinians, I think that the voluntary displacement will take place, and this voluntary displacement will not evacuate a third of the Palestinians, will only take a third of the Palestinians out of their lands. The rest will hold on to their lands, as the Palestinians have always rejected the displacement and being removed from their lands. We talk about the Beit Hanun camps, the Jabalia camps. They're all the refugee camps of displaced populations from other Palestinian lands, from the West Bank, from Jerusalem, from other states. They do not want to be externally displaced. They want to return, the right to return to their homelands once again, which Israel will face with all powers possible. But Israel and the international community and the Europeans today are starting to understand that what's happening in Israel is a violation to human rights, to the international humanitarian law, and we have seen the United States supporting these violations.